Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, Head of Public Affairs, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hello, everyone.
We're back following the coronation weekend, and the big story in our world is the local elections. Tell us more, Dennis.
Well, the local elections, of course, have been and gone, but they do raise many questions in their aftermath, not least about the impact of voter ID. So, how did it affect those elections? With nearly all of the results now declared, the Conservatives have lost control of more than 40 councils. Gains have been shared by Labour, Liberal Democrats, and Greens in all regions. But these were the first local elections where people had to provide photo ID to vote. The new system was heavily criticised by opponents, including opposition parties, who made a number of claims. But according to Professor John Curtis, the BBC's elections expert, voter ID does not seem to have had a big impact on turnout, and it does not seem to have disadvantaged Labour, as some claimed it might, because the list of photo ID permissible was more suited to pensioners than students. Curtis told the BBC it was too early to draw firm conclusions, but he said three trends stood out. One, turnout is only slightly down on both 2019 and 2022, which at least is clear evidence against the argument that there was a significant loss of turnout as a result of the voter ID requirements. Secondly, experts cannot discern any relationship between the fall in turnout, such as it was, and the proportion of people who don't have a passport, which is one indicator of the availability of the requirement for voter ID. And thirdly, experts certainly can't see any link between the extent to which turnout fell and how well or badly Labour did in particular areas. The Association of Electoral Administrators said polling day had run as smoothly as usual without any major issues. AEA Chief Executive Peter Stanion noted there were anecdotal reports of people being turned away because of a lack of ID, but said it was still too early to gauge how introducing voter ID had actually gone. The Electoral Commission has revealed that it will conduct a full report on the local elections, which will analyse the impact of the voter ID requirement. The Commission noted that some people were regrettably unable to vote in the elections as a result of the new measure. Now, did your election team face problems implementing the voter ID scheme? Let us know on the LLG forum page.
Now reported in The Guardian, this is the rather damning review of the government's response to COVID in respect of social adult care. A 2-year study by the Nuffield Trust Health think tank and the London School of Economics found successive governments failed to respond to risks already exposed by cross-government pandemic planning exercises, didn't have enough civil servants working on social care, and failed to appreciate the sector's fragility when sending patients into ill-prepared care homes. Natasha Curry, Deputy Director of Policy at the Nuffield Trust, said, "Those early months exposed weaknesses within social care that impacted the shape, speed, and effectiveness of the response. Many of these difficult challenges could have been eased had warnings been heeded. Governments of all hues have failed to make social care and those who need it a priority." The findings include the facts that social care leaders felt invisible at the start of the pandemic because there'd been no dedicated Director General for social care in government since 2016, and no adult social care representative sat on the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, and people leading the UK pandemic response lacked, quote, deep understanding of social care. This report has been released before the first public hearing date of the COVID inquiry on the 13th of June, which Dennis and I will be covering, and against the backdrop, as I reported in April, of the delay to liberty protection safeguards and the impact on the Mental Capacity Act Code of Practice. Dennis, recruitment and indeed retention are big issues for the sector. Is there a magic cure for this?
Well, possibly. All councils are facing recruitment and retention issues, as you say, and employing agency staff can be expensive and not always the right solution for filling some roles. But one council may have found the answer in the form of a 4-day week. Now here's the story. South Cambridgeshire District Council is to extend a 3-month trial of a 4-day working week until March 2024, after judging it a success in helping with staff recruitment and retention. Reports to its Employment and Staffing Committee found productivity had been broadly maintained and said the 4-day working week of all desk-based staff should continue and be extended to those in facilities management. On the issue of recruitment, it noted, recruitment costs are not limited to advertising and going through the recruitment process. When taking into account the time spent inducting new employees to reach a level of full productivity in the role, estimates by Oxford Economics are that filling a role costs on average about £30,000, making the case for addressing the recruitment challenge very early. By August 2022, there were 23 agency staff employed to cover vacancies. This was at an annual cost of £2.1 million. The wage bill for permanent employees in the same roles would be expected to be around half as much, resulting in potential savings of close to £1 million if the 4-day week led to these roles being replaced by permanent employees. Among staff surveyed about the experiment, nearly 89% of respondents said that they would like to move permanently to a 4-day week. 10% were neutral and nearly 2% opposed. The reports concluded that improved recruitment would be achieved because the 4-day week would deliver savings to reduce reliance on agency staff.
Not covered in the bulletin, but making the top news this week on the BBC, was the backlash to the SATS reading paper taken by Year 6, 10 and 11-year-olds in primary school before they make the change to secondary school in September. For those of you who might not know, these are assessments which take place in exam conditions and assess the national curriculum in English and maths. This particular paper has come under attack for being far too hard, with 2 education unions raising concerns about the paper and one trust founder claiming the texts chosen were, quote, inappropriate in that they were elitist and covered experiences that were completely outside the cultural context of children that live in poverty. In other news, persistent absence remains a big concern. Taken from the LGA Bulletin, the government has been asked what steps they're taking to address the issues of so-called ghost children, including the 2 million children who are persistently absent from school in England. In response, Education Minister Baroness Barron said that the government is taking the issue of high school absences extremely seriously and has placed stronger expectations on schools, trusts and local authorities while providing targeted support, including a team of 10 expert attendance advisors, which are working with every local authority. The Department of Education has also set up an attendance alliance chaired by the Secretary of State, which meets monthly and is working with a number of experts in the field to share best practice with schools and other stakeholders. Meanwhile, the LGA's Vice President, Lord Story, and Baroness Whitaker called on the government to urgently legislate for the register of children who are not in school, which in response has to wait for when parliamentary time is available. Dennis, what can you tell us about the SRA's latest review?
Well, I have been looking at the SRA review of the in-house legal sector. Why have they done a review? How did they do it? And what can we learn? Here's more. More than 34,500 in-house solicitors now work in more than 6,000 organisations across England and Wales in a wide range of industries and public bodies. This important, influential and diverse part of the profession plays a key role in helping organisations to behave legally, fairly and ethically. The SRA review showed that most in-house solicitors felt positive about their role in organisations and also felt that their legal function was valued. However, solicitors also highlighted significant political and economic pressures, increasing workloads, and challenges in retaining and recruiting talent. So, why did the SRA do the review in the first place? Well, They say they wanted to better understand the role of in-house solicitors, in particular, how they support an ethical culture in their organisations, the challenges that they face in meeting their professional obligations, and how they, the SRA, can help support in-house solicitors. Now, the review makes important key findings in 5 areas after carrying out surveys and in-depth interviews, and these included safeguarding independence, managing risks, and ethics and leadership. In their conclusions, the SRA saw evidence that the sector adds considerable value to organisations and the wider legal community. However, it also faces a number of challenges. Many in-house solicitors described experiencing commercial and, in some cases, political pressures and professional isolation. Take a look at the review. It's an important study about a sector in which we are a key influencer for future regulation.
And particularly important MOs and all those working within a regulatory field, no doubt. Finally, from me, back in October, Lord Evans, chair of the Committee on Standards in Public Life, wrote to the government to express disappointment about its response to their ethical standards recommendations, first published, let me think, 4 years ago. In the letter, Lord Evans stated that it was clear from their evidence that the sector backed up their call to strengthen the arrangements in place to support high ethical standards, and that there is now clear frustration within local authorities at the limited powers within the local government standards regime to address poor behaviour by a minority of individuals. Lord Evans urged the government to reconsider and requested a conversation to discuss its. Well, Lee Rowley, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Local Government and Building Safety, advised Lord Evans in his response that the government, quote, sought to strike a balance between the issues they believe do not need a legislative response, but can be more appropriately, effectively and swiftly taken forward by local authorities as best practice. He went on, quote, we are committed to working to ensure that local government is supported in reinforcing its reputation for ethical local standards, and we are keen to build on the sector-wide enthusiasm for improvement, which is evident in your report. It is precisely that stated commitment that Lord Evans wishes to discuss with the government, but whether he is afforded the opportunity is another matter. Indeed, we would all appreciate understanding the practicalities of that commitment to the improvement of ethical standards. And on that note, you can read more on the items discussed today and many more besides by going to bulletin number 18, available on the LLG website now. So it's goodbye from me.
And the same from me too.
Thank you for listening. Have a good week.